November 1982. Fear cloaks the serenity of a small town in New Jersey. Popular teenager Amie Hoffman has disappeared without a trace. The police can't say if she's alive or dead, but psychic Nancy Weber knows there's been a murder and fears the killer is on a rampage.
He's killed before, he's killing again. He's going to kill more.
Can Nancy help catch the killer before his brutality is unleashed again? November 23, 1982. Amie Hoffman, an 18-year-old senior high school student, leaves her part-time job at a Morris County shopping mall. In the parking lot, she says goodnight to her friend. It's approximately 9:35 p.m. Two people see Amie as she walks across the back lot to where her car is parked. One, a fellow worker driving out of the parking lot. The other, her killer.
Well, her vehicle was found in the parking lot, not too far away from the store that she worked in. The door was open on the car, and there was a witness, and she noticed a white male, in a green Chevrolet that was parked a couple spots away from where Amie's car was. And he was just sitting there in the car at that time.
It's Thanksgiving, 2 days since Amie Hoffman was last seen alive. Morris County, New Jersey comprises several small townships. Police departments from across the region become involved in the search for Amie.
Had a major impact on the community. Women were hesitant about going out on their own, especially at night.
20 miles away in Mount Olive, Nancy Weber, who runs her own psychic practice, gets a phone call from a woman.
She said, my daughter has a best friend who works at the Morris County Mall. And she's missing. She didn't come home. And that's when the vision popped up. The image I kept having was this naked body, multiple wounds all over. She was lying in water, raped. She had been terribly, terribly violated before she was murdered. And so I just went right into saying to her, I am sorry. I really can't discuss this with you. You call Amie's parents, or you call the police that are involved.
That same day, Amie Hoffman's body was found in a retention tank at the reservoir in Randolph.
There was a couple walking their dog through the woods, and they came across the body floating in the water. There was numerous slashes and stab wounds to her body, and some were post-mortem, meaning that after she had died, the assailant still continued to slash at her and cut her body. It was pretty gruesome.
Nancy's vision of the dead young woman was accurate. Bill Hughes, a detective with the Mount Olive Police Department, happened to drop by Nancy's house.
Most of the police officers in Mount Olive Township knew Nancy because she was just a friend of a lot of guys on the force, her and her family. And I stopped by Nancy's house just for a cup of coffee.
By the way, I read the newspaper account of Amie Hoffman. Why are they lying? She was raped. She wasn't not sexually abused. She was mutilated, not no wounds obvious.
The investigators at the time did not believe that sexual assault had occurred, but Nancy said that it had, that the girl had been sexually assaulted. There was no way of knowing because there was no physical evidence that you could see at the scene, according to the investigators, to indicate any type of sexual contact. What we found out later on was, yes, she indeed had been sexually assaulted by the suspect, and that was the result of forensics taken by the medical examiner's office.
I didn't say anything to Bill about wanting to be involved at all. It's one of the things I don't ever do. I wait to be asked. When it comes to this kind of work, it's very important, I believe, for all concerned, including the victim, to know that I am the appropriate person to participate. It's an ingredient. I'm one of the ingredients or not. So I don't ask to help.
Maybe to a lesser extent today, but at that time, psychics were certainly not taken seriously. I was a small player in this investigation. I'm on the periphery. I had to find somebody that was very open-minded, kind of like myself. You know, I'll try anything once, I believe anything once until it's proven wrong.
Detective Bill Hughes has faith in Nancy's psychic powers, and she has a real concern that the killer will strike again.
He's killed before, he's killing again, he's going to kill more.
November 1982, Morris County, New Jersey. 18-year-old student Amie Hoffman goes missing. 2 days later, her mutilated body is discovered in a water retention tank. Police from all across the region are hunting down a brutal killer. On the same day Amie's body is discovered, psychic Nancy Weber has a vision of the crime scene. She knows that the young woman has been sexually assaulted and murdered even before police. Now she suspects the killer will strike again. She's right.
The second victim was a girl named Deidre O'Brien, who worked in a local restaurant and was heading home early in the morning. It was after midnight. She was forced off the road and abducted from her vehicle, and later brought to a rest stop on Route 80 in Warren Township, where she was murdered. We were all very upset because now we had 2 gruesome homicides on our hands, and we had a feeling that the same individual was involved because the same type vehicle was seen leaving the scene of Deidre O'Brien's homicide.
A second woman dead in such a short time leaves little doubt that police are dealing with a serial killer. But this time, the killer leaves a calling card: tire prints. Detective Bill Hughes thinks it's crucial to get Nancy officially involved in the case, but he is just one of hundreds of police officers tracking down what they now suspect is a serial killer. He needs to get someone he can trust to hear her out.
I knew that Jimmy Moore is a seasoned veteran. Jimmy has well over 20 years on the police force at the time. He's a captain. He's in charge of the detectives in Parsippany. He's more directly involved in the case because Amie Hoffman is from Parsippany. So I knew that if I could talk to Jim, then I might be able to get them to use Nancy to do some investigative leads on the case, or to give us some direction to go in the case.
I had never used a psychic, and I was a little skeptical. I really didn't believe too much into them. Is it possible? I mean, can somebody truly do this? I actually had flashbacks of being on the boardwalk and down at the Jersey Shore, and you see these signs, palm readings, and of course I don't believe in any of that. And so I was a little skeptical, but I said, you know what? We have nothing really to go with. If there's a chance that it's going to solve the case, I'm willing to try it.
When I opened the door to Bill at 6'5", standing next to this about 5'7" man who he introduces as Captain Jimmy Moore from Homicide, I thought, uh-oh, what now?
I asked Nancy some questions and stuff like that, and pretty much wanted to get to know her as an individual. And I found out that she was just down-to-earth type of individual, and she didn't seem to be a person that exaggerates or puts anything on. And I was impressed by her personality. And I said, "How do you do this?" And she says, I just see it. And she says, "I don't know why or how, but I just see things."
What we decided to do at that point was take a ride in my car. And what we were going to do is take Nancy, by the scenes of the abduction, and the scenes of the murder, and the scenes where their bodies were left.
When I was driving with Bill and Jimmy in the car the first day, when we went down a road, I could feel I was coming towards the end of her life. It was as if the energy of the road itself got darker and darker, got more magnetically charged with an energy that felt more panicky, heightened anxiety.
The first place that we went to was the reservoir in Randolph. We took Nancy down there and parked the cars, and we let Nancy walk around. It wasn't in any one of about 12 acres. And Nancy went right to the spot where Amie was left.
I felt almost as if Amie was waiting for me there on the ground. So I got down on the ground on my knees, and I could feel no separation between the memory of what Amie went through and myself at that point. I began to speak words I believed were the last words, where she was begging, "Please don't kill me." I believe she knew that that's what he was about by then. She had already been raped. She had already been badly cut. And I believe she understood that he was enjoying this. And she didn't know how to get through to him. She had no idea how to get through to this person who seemed bent on destroying her. For me, it was very important to stay with it because I'm looking for the tiniest bit of a clue, a shred of evidence that might stop him. Went back in the car and kept reviewing. Now I'm going over all the film. Again and again, like an editor, attempting to be as detailed as possible. Pop. He's from Polish descent. He grew up in Morristown. Pop. He was in Florida. He was in jail there for murder. And I'm telling Jimmy and Bill as I get it, in the car, driving, they let him out. Early parole? Pop. His name kept coming to me, the man who was with her. James. I don't know if she knew his name. I knew it. So when I got the last name beginning with a K and Kadababaich.
I felt that Nancy was seeing what we were looking for. She had this individual pegged, and she was trying as hard as she could to give us as much evidence that she could see to arrest us, to arrest him, because she kept telling me, "Jim says this guy is sick, and he's just going to keep killing until he's caught." And she was upset with that. She was very adamant about telling me that this was a sick individual and he's just going to keep on killing.
With 2 brutal murders occurring within 10 days, every available police officer in Morris County is on the case. Most are following procedure, the routine that is police work. 2 are following a totally different line of inquiry. Detectives Jimmy Moore and Bill Hughes have teamed up with psychic Nancy Weber in their own private investigation. They've been able to get quite a bit of information from Nancy about the first murder. Now they want to know what she can tell them about the second.
After the Deidre O'Brien homicide, I picked up Nancy and we drove to the rest area where the crime had taken place.
She took us right to the spot where the suspect had parked with Deidre. She described the encounter there.
And I see this truck in my mind. And I see a trucker, and I see this woman coming out of a speeding car. She's naked. She's knifed. And I'm looking at the car, and I'm looking at her. This is James. I know it.
And that's when Deidre had enough strength to pick herself up and go to the truck to knock on the door, getting help from the truck driver.
The truck driver got on the CB radio and radioed for help, and troopers eventually got there, but unfortunately, Deidre passed away in the arms of the truck driver.
I was impressed with Nancy when I took her to the truck stop, because everything that she was telling me was exactly what had happened, as much as we knew from the evidence and from the truck driver's statement.
Over the next few days, Nancy keeps replaying the visions over in her head.
Every time I would go back to James, I would get another tiny little piece. He was at least about 5'10", slim, very narrow, thin, long nose, dark eyes. And I'd spend hours on it. I would be reviewing it, kind of like 18-hour days of review editing. Then I'd go back some more, and I'd feel the car, his brother, gas station. Brother owns it, works it. That's where he got the car, from his brother at a gas station. They're local. They're Wharton, they're Morristown, they're local. They all know who he is. Everybody knows who he is. Don't know his last name. He was a local terror. Growing up even, the cops all know who he is. He's not an unfamiliar character. This guy was dangerous when he was in high school.
At this stage, the detectives want permission from the county prosecutor to officially involve Nancy in the investigation, but before they can present their case, they are denied access to his office. The prosecutor is not interested.
I was upset with the prosecutor for not even hearing us out. I felt that he should have at least listened to what we had to say, and it bothered me. To this day, it bothers me why he did that.
Nancy is also upset and frustrated. She decides to appeal to a higher authority. She calls some students who she trusts, and they form a psychic circle. Together, they use psychic prayer to try and stop the killer in his tracks.
Went through everything. And when I was finished, I told them, join hands with me. So we went to the light, went to the Godhead, went to the apex, and through that, asked that if it was in the spiritual path of all concerned, to bring back to James K. Itch the pain he has given and the suffering he has caused. Let him feel it now. Let him get it in such a manner he can no longer give it. And I simply held on to that thought the rest of the night. It was my mantra. It was my chant. It is his time.
The power of divine intervention has been argued and disputed since time began. Can a New Jersey psychic's prayer really stop the killer in his tracks? In fact, there's been a dramatic break in the case overnight.
I get a call home, and I was told that an individual was arrested in response to the Amie Hoffman, Deidre O'Brien murders. They responded to a home in Morristown where an individual had been stabbed. While they were at the scene, one of the officers noticed the green Chevrolet sitting in the driveway, and it matched the description of the vehicle we were looking for. So they called for the forensic team to come to the scene to check this vehicle out. As it turned out, they found the tire on the car matched the imprint that was found at Deidre O'Brien's abduction. And subsequently, the individual was arrested and charged with the 2 homicides.
So we have our guy under arrest, James Kodadich, and what we find out about James is very interesting. A lot of the stuff that Nancy had told us was right on the money. James Kodadich had a brother who was a mechanic, had lived pretty much his entire life in Morris County. James had moved to Florida, had been in prison in Florida, and that he'd murdered while he was in prison in Florida, stuff that Nancy had come up with. His last name was Kodadich, the K and the ITCH that Nancy had come up with.
Early in the morning, I get a call from Jimmy, and he goes, "Hey, Nancy, what did you do?" I said, "What do you mean, what did I do?" He said, "What did you do?" I said, "I had class last night." And I told them about it. And we said a prayer. And I told God to finish it. Make this man have all the pain he gave to women. He said, "Well, James Kodadich." And as he said the words and the name, it was like, boom, 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 lights go on. I went, "That's him."
All the information that she saw, that she gave us, was exactly the truth.
I think that a lot of people have to see for themselves. You know, there's going to be people that are going to watch this episode and they're going to see me and they're going to listen to me talk. They're going to listen to Jimmy Moore talk. They're going to listen to different people talking about their experiences with psychics, and they're just not going to buy it. And so be it. But if you're a police officer and you don't buy it, then you probably shouldn't be in the investigative side of anything.
But there is still a mystery surrounding the event of James Kodadich's arrest. Police arrived at his house after he called them complaining he'd been stabbed. Could Nancy's prayer have anything to do with this?
He claimed that a dark-haired woman ran him off the road and knifed him in the back. And at the time, my hair wasn't gray, and it was longish. And I thought, I wonder if he'd recognize me if he met me. I'd love it. I'd love him to know that, you stand there with all the victims. And that victims have power, you fool. How could you do this?
It's up to you to decide whether she had anything to do with it or not.
On October 29, 1984, James Kodadich became the first man sentenced to die under New Jersey's revised capital punishment statute. The sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment. After his arrest, it was determined that Kodadich had actually stabbed himself. He never explained why, although the self-inflicted wounds were not life-threatening, and apparently he never again spoke of the long-haired woman he claimed had attacked him. But perhaps he sees her now and then.